turned back around and went back down to Shoemaker Crossing, and this is about 4:22 in the morning. And the water up that I saw at that point was something I had never seen before. It was massive, and it was just flowing so fast. I knew that this was something that was not good at all. So I called into the sheriff's department and asked for a code red for citizens of Hunt to find higher ground or stay home.
All right, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell the story.
My name is Lee Poole. I'm the fire chief of the Hunt Volunteer Fire Department, and I'm going to tell you my story about the floods in Kerr County of July of 2025. We started off the week before the 4th of July in Denver for a family vacation, and we were coming home on the 3rd of July, was going to return to Kerr County about 8 o'clock in the evening. I was supposed to be working night shift at Camp Mystic. I've been doing that for the last 5 years as a night watchman with the Eastlands, and our flight got delayed, so I called my friend Glenn, asking him if he would pick up my night shift on the 3rd, and he said he had no plans, that he would be happy to do that for me. So our flight got in late, about 10 o'clock at night. We drove in from San Antonio and went to sleep. It was raining, nothing abnormal, and so around 2:59 I get a text message from Glenn, and he asked me if I'm awake. And so I reply back and say, yes, I am, what's up? And I did not hear anything back from him, so I'm kind of sleeping with, one eye open, wondering why he's texting me. I know it's raining, and I know there's, potential for flooding in the area, in the Guadalupe River, but he didn't send me anything that was pressing, so I didn't think really that much of it. Around 3:37, my phone goes off, and we have an app called Active 911, and it's a specific sound that tone makes on my phone, and I knew at that point there was probably going to be some issues, and so I looked at it, and the tone that I received was for a family of 5 stuck on their roof at 2029 Highway 39, which is the area of Casa Bonita. And it said that they were trapped on the roof, the water was rising, and were looking for swift and water rescue. So at that point, my wife asked me what was going on. I told her that there was flooding in the area and that I needed to go see if I could help. So I threw on my clothes. I wore shorts that night because I figured I would get wet. Jumped in my truck, called my assistant chief, Heath Turner, on the phone. Let him know that I was on my way. He called me back and said he was getting dressed as well. I called into Kerr County Dispatch, cleared the call, and said I was on my way. Once I got out on Highway 39, out of Cypress Springs Estates, which is the subdivision I live in, I turned right to go towards Hunt. And there is a low water crossing that's just right outside of my gates. And normally, and we've lived here for 19 years, that low water crossing has water flowing across it when there's flooding. This particular night, it had no water running across that, which struck me very odd, that if we were getting called for a flood, where's the water? Didn't see it where I was, and so it kind of struck me funny, but I kept on, drove down Highway 39. I get to Shoemaker Crossing and realized that we're flooding, and the flooding's pretty big. Nothing that I haven't seen before in the 19 years. It looked like a standard flood, but it was still big enough for me to turn around and try to get back to my wife and children at home. I didn't want to get trapped on Highway 39. So heading back east on Highway 39, I get to Cardinal Hill Road, and the flood had already come through, and the pavement had already been peeled up. Water was splashing around. It was everywhere. There was no way that I could get through that, and I knew better than to try. So I called my wife and just said, hey, I'm trapped on Highway 39. Turned back around and went back to Shoemaker Crossing, and the flooding was much larger than it was the first time that I saw it. There were people that were trying to come out of Canyon Springs, and I pulled my truck up to the entrance of the gate there, was flashing my lights, and I've got red and whites on my truck that were flashing to signify that I'm an emergency vehicle. So I was honking my horn, flashing my lights, waving my spotlight at them, discouraging them from coming out on Highway 39, because I knew that if I'm trapped, they're going to be trapped, and we'll all be trapped, and so it was better for them to go back home. So I was being very stern about not allowing people to come onto Highway 39, and the river got to a point where it blocked the entrance of Canyon Springs, and so they couldn't get out. So at that point, I turned back around and started looking for places that I knew that I needed to go take care of myself, and started looking at driveways, kept an eye on the river on the right side, found a location, I think it's probably 1308 Highway 39, that I felt comfortable. It was high enough far enough away from the river, I felt like that was my spot to go sit and wait it out. I turned back around and went back down to Shoemaker Crossing, and this is about 4:22 in the morning. And the water that I saw at that point was something I had never seen before. It was massive, and it was just flowing so fast. I knew that this was something that was not good at all. So I called into the sheriff's department and asked for a code red for citizens of Hunt to find higher ground or stay home. That was the safest thing that I could think that people should do. And so I turned back around to my hiding spot and backed my truck up into that driveway. The water kept rising. There were times where I would put my spotlight out in the field and look for landmarks where the water was heading towards and kind of timed it to see how fast the water got to it. I did that 5 different times, and the water kept blowing past those landmarks every single time. While that was going on, I'm watching round bales float down the river. They're about 2,000 pounds each, and they're just bobbing like corks in the water, zipping by at about 50 miles an hour. There are 2 residents that are across the river. They're cement structures, kind of a modern type build. And I started seeing lights flashing at me from those residents. And so I got my spotlight out and started flashing back at them. I would flash twice, they would flash twice. I would flash 3 times, they would flash 3 times. So we're kind of playing light tag, if you want to call it that. And then out of the corner of my eye, I see some lights coming down the river. So I put my spotlight on a vehicle as it's going by, and there are people hanging out of the car windows screaming for help. And there's nothing I can do. The water was just of the magnitude that if you were to try to rescue somebody, it was going to be your demise as well. So I wait, and the water keeps coming up, and I called my wife back again to let her know that I was safe, that I was not going to be a casualty. There was a residence that was up on a hill behind me, and I told her that was going to be my safe haven. That's where I was going to retreat to when the timing was right. I told her the moment the water got to my truck, that's when I would leave. And it didn't take much time for the water to come up to my truck and start splashing off the hood. So I abandoned my truck, jumped the fence, and started making my way up to the house. And about that time, the rain stopped, the water stopped rising and held for just a little bit and then started going back down. So I went back to my truck and got in. At that point, I received a phone call from the director of Camp La Junta, and he was in hysterics, and he was screaming for help over the phone, asking me to come save 36 kids that were trapped on top of a cabin roof. The cabin roof was collapsing and the water was rising. And I told him that there was nothing that I could do, and there was nothing that anybody could do, that we were all trapped, and that I was praying for him, and that he was in charge of those kids, and that I wished him the best, and that I would be praying for him, and that I wanted him to call me back, and hopefully he would give me good news. I asked him what percent he thought he had of the campers at that time, and he said that he felt like he had about 90% of the campers accounted for, and that was including the 36. So there were still some that he wasn't sure about. The water started going down a little bit more. I called downstream to Charles Holt, the chief of the Center Point Fire Department, and let him know that there was some massive flooding that was heading his way, and if he could get word out to his community before the water got there, that hopefully that would save some lives as well. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So the waters came up rapidly. It was very, very fast. I didn't really realize how fast until I went to the Emergency Operations Center. This is later on, probably about 10 days after the 4th of July. But the word that I got was the water surge that blew through Camp Mystic took about 27 seconds, and that the water was rising about 1 foot a minute. And so that made sense to me why the water was rising so fast where I was. It really was about 1 foot a minute. As I'm driving down Highway 39, when the water's receding, it was going so fast that it left fish flopping around on Highway 39. So I still couldn't travel very far, so I got out of my truck and was kicking fish back into the river, which was way out of its banks, but it was just right off the shoulder of Highway 39. So I was kicking fish back into the water, and they were swimming back downstream. I just basically had to wait for the water to go down, and the sun started to come up. The water was receding, so I could get back towards Canyon Springs. When I was able to get out of my vehicle, as soon as I opened my door, the very first thing that I smelled was propane gas in the air, and it was probably the thickest propane gas that I'd ever smelled, and I could hear tanks off to my left. I'm facing the westbound lane, and it was propane tanks that had been stripped off their foundations next to homes, and they were spewing, and you can hear them hissing in the background. People started showing up again from Canyon Springs, some people that I knew, some of them were smokers, and so I asked them real quick, please don't light any cigarettes. We have propane gas in the air. We've already got a big enough problem. We don't need that problem as well. And then we started hearing cries for help from the homes that were right across next to the river, right off the banks. And so the people that were available, we started going door to door, yelling fire department, search and rescue, and going through these homes just filled with mud, debris. Furniture had been rearranged in the homes, pressed up against walls, doors, windows. It was difficult to get in these homes to try to find anyone that would have survived this. The water levels in those homes were anywhere between 8 feet, 10 feet, some of them over the roofs. You could tell where the water line had completely submerged some of these residents. We came across bodies. One of them was a gentleman's mother, and we helped him carry her across Highway 39 to higher ground because the rain kicked back in, and we thought the river was going to come up a second time, and we did not want to lose victims that we had found. Went back to my truck, and we had the opportunity to get up into Canyon Springs where we have a substation. So we grabbed a fire truck from the substation and started going back towards Bumblebee Hills, other residents, to see if there were any other casualties, what we could do as a fire department to help, taking notes, calling into dispatch, just relaying information, giving as much information and communication as we could. We wanted to be as accurate with our information as possible, so the resources that we had coming into the area and the assets that we had coming in were the right ones for the right job at the right time. We could not get across Shoemaker Crossing. Texas Department of Emergency Management, the game wardens, Navy SEAL crews were coming in. I talked to Nim Kidd, the director of Texas Department of Emergency Management, and he was asking me, how do we get Zodiac boats upriver to Camp Mystic? And he and I both looked at the river, looked at the damage, and still just the amount of water and the speed of the water. And I asked him, are you sure this is something that you want to do? Because you're about to be probably in the biggest adventure of your life. And he said, yes, we have to get upstream. And I said, I understand. So I got a stick and drew a little map in the mud and showed them where we were. I had the South Fork and the North Fork meeting in one spot at Shoemaker Crossing. And if you wanted to be able to get upstream, you're going to have to go into Canyon Springs, take the hypotenuse across those two waterfronts and navigate upstream on the South Fork. And they took their boats into Canyon Springs. That's the last I saw of them. I heard they were successful, which is great, but very dangerous. I've got a lot of respect for Nim Kidd and the crew that did put their lives in danger's way to go save people. When the waters went down, we all met at the Hunt Volunteer Fire Department, assembled our crews, found where the needs were, what we had available at the time, and started sending our people out to these residents. And before they left, we all huddled up and circled up, prayed for safety, prayed for the families that were affected, prayed for our firefighters that the Lord would help shield their eyes and protect their eyes and protect their hearts from things they were going to see, because we knew it was going to be bad. And then at that point, it became work. And it was something that I have never done in my life before. I've taken incident command classes, 300, 400 level, which are designed to teach you how to respond and coordinate and orchestrate rescue operations on a massive level. And so that training kicked in, and we got our crews and groups out to the fields, started receiving supplies, cadaver dogs, directing helicopters and other resources and assets to areas that we knew that they needed to be sent. Excavators, skid steers, equine, just anything and everything that people had that they knew would be needed for this search and rescue operation were showing up, and it was just nonstop decision making on where these people and equipment needed to be to go help serve. We started getting in reports of people being found, and it was just nonstop. Very hard to take because there were people that you knew. The hardest one for me was one of my teaching friends from Tybee High School came up to me and asked me if I'd heard about Reese Sunker. And Reese and I are friends. And I'd been to his mother-in-law's house, which was around the 2000 block of Highway 39. And that was where my initial call came in for the family of 5 on the roof. I knew where he was, and I knew what had happened to him. And I knew we weren't going to find him alive. So that was very tough. And that really, the reality of all this really sunk in with that news. And I'm sorry I'm getting choked up. But I knew that if I knew people that were on the river, that there were other people I was working with, that they knew people. And if I was sad and depressed and just emotionally drained at the news that I was receiving, I knew everybody else was. So we made it a point as our department, from the 4th of July, the 5th of July, all the way out, that we would make it a point to pray with each other in the mornings, pray with each other at lunch, and then we would pray again in the evenings before we went home. And we were working stars to stars every day for about a month. And that was important to us because we needed something bright during these dark times. And the Lord brought that camaraderie to us, brought peace. And what we as a department decided to do is we wanted to make sure that we were models of what kindness and calm would be, because there was plenty of chaos, sadness, crying, depression, all the things. And we wanted to make sure that we were those that people could rely on, to be firm, to be strong, to be kind, to be calm. And that's what Hunt needed at the time. And that's what we delivered. And it was not on our own. I know the poem and the story Footprints, where the Lord is with you and you see 2 sets of footprints in the sand, and at some points it's just 1 set of footprints. And that's when the Lord was carrying us. So, with that being said, it was 3 weeks of nonstop looking for people, praying for people, finding parts of people, hoping that we would find someone alive, a miracle, anything. And now we're at the point where we're still looking for 2 people. We're looking for anything that we can find that would match DNA that we can give these families closure with. Throughout this whole process, it has been something that I will never forget, obviously. Something that I am proud to be a part of with my department, with the community of Hunt. The Hunt community is unincorporated. There's no city government. So a lot of the responsibilities during that time fell upon the fire department, the independent school district, the Hunt Methodist Church, and the Hunt Baptist Church. So Sarah Nichols, Lucy Harmon, myself, along with our assistant chiefs, Avery Adams, Heath Turner, Kurt Griffin, and the Baptist preacher, John Collis, and Pastor Harris over at the Methodist Church, we kept Hunt running, making sure that our community had everything they need resource-wise: food, water, shelter, showers, anything that we could do to support these families in their time of need, because they didn't have anything. There were many families that lost everything, lost their homes. There were people that were clinging to family members that were swept away right in front of them, and then they lost their lives. It was just something from a horror film that I never want to relive. They say that this is something that won't ever happen for another 500 years, and I pray that that's the truth. Even 500 years from now, I hope that this doesn't happen. We start looking at stats and data. Like, we knew it was huge. How huge is this really? And so when you start looking at data, they compare this to Niagara Falls. And so Niagara Falls, the daily flow over the falls is around 65 billion gallons of water, and that's for a 24-hour period. Kerr County, Hunt, Texas, the night of July the 4th, we received 120 billion gallons of water in a short amount of time. So the destruction that we have in Hunt and down through Kerr County was basically twice the amount of water that you have going over Niagara Falls, compacted into a small river going downstream. And that's why you have these levels that are 30, 40, 50 feet at times, when we see cars that are suspended and resting in cypress trees that are 35 feet up in the air. And now it makes you understand how that happened, and because you wonder, how in the world did a tree hold a car that was suspended 35 feet in the air? It's because the water levels were that high at some points along the river. We have a great auxiliary group, so when we had supplies that were coming in, water, food, we also got chainsaws, boots, gloves, socks, underwear, clothing that we knew that our first responders would need. That was a process. We got our Hunt Volunteer Fire Department auxiliary on, so we had a great group of ladies, Mitzi Silber and her gang, just organizing and distributing all of these materials and resources to these first responders that were coming in, making sure that they were fit and capable to go out and do the job that they needed to do day in and day out. And it was just amazing to see the Lord's work through people in Hunt at the time. It does. It makes you proud to be a part of an organization and a group of people that have the vision and have the heart, and you can see the Lord's work in all of them. And once again, it makes you proud that people step up in a crisis, in a time of need, and they're not complaining. They're asking, how can I help? And they never back off of that. At some point I was going around and I was praying with people that were coming in, and you could tell they were depressed and you could tell that they were hurting. But I would pray with them and tell them, this is the day that the Lord has made. Let's rejoice and be glad in it, and look for the light. Look for the bright spots. There's plenty of dark, but you can find the positives. And we would look for those positives. And the positives that we would find would be the people that were coming in from out of state, local people that were coming in to serve us food, hot meals whenever we were just tired and beat down, people that were coming in wanting to give massages and just comforting you physically so you could continue to do the job and task that you were signed up to do and that you volunteered to do. Just the kindness and the generosity of people brought back complete faith and trust in humanity. Later on, when we knew that there were no more survivors, we did shift into search and recovery. We had pastors, mental health people coming through, checking in on us, and that was definitely well received and much needed, because it was just tiring. We were all just completely exhausted, mentally, physically, and you knew that you didn't feel normal and you needed to talk to people to get things off of your chest. It's therapeutic to talk about the events that you went through. Situations like this, where I'm speaking to the camera right now, is something that's good for me. It lets me tell my story. It helps me decompress and let some of that stress and anxiety out. And if there's anybody that's watching this that has feelings that they can't get out of their head or out of their heart, I definitely suggest that you take the time to visit with somebody, because it's good for you. And it makes you feel better that you're able to express your emotions and your feelings. And it helps you drop some of that heavy weight that you're carrying. I would try to do that every morning. I was on a very strict routine with myself. I would get up in the morning and have coffee. I would have my devotional. I would play some bass guitar along with praise and worship music, and that's how I gave everything up to the Lord. I did that first thing in the morning so I could drop that heavy weight from my heart, so I could travel lightly through the day. And I knew that I would be picking things up that were heavy, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't carry extra weight from the day before. So the Lord played a very important part in my life through this whole process. He's always been with me, but I felt Him even more from the 4th of July on. It has definitely brought me closer to Him, has brought me closer to my wife, has brought me closer to my children, has brought me closer to my friends, has given me a much greater appreciation for life. And I want to say thank you to everybody that I came across during this whole process from the 4th of July on. There are so many people I've met. There are so many numbers I've exchanged. There are so many emails that I've responded to. And a part of me feels guilty that I don't remember all of them, because they were so good. They did so many nice things. They contributed, and they did it without asking for anything. And so part of me feels responsible that I owe them some bigger thanks than what I gave them, just a handshake and a hug. But they didn't ask for it. They just came and they gave their time on their own. And so if any of you are watching this, thank you. I can't thank you enough. Our department can't thank you enough. And the city of Hunt can't thank you enough. It's something that we'll never forget. And we cherish every moment that you gave to us, helping us get through this hard time. I'll just say in closing that this has definitely changed me as a person. It has, once again, given me a higher appreciation for spirituality, for life in general. There were things that you see and things that you had to do to help others in their time of need, and helping those that have already been deceased, that you wanted to make sure that you respected them and the shell that they left behind. Just showing respect as much as you could to everybody that you came in contact with. It's just overwhelming as far as emotions go, but it definitely has made me much more appreciative of life in general and relationships. So I'll have to conclude with that this has just been an experience of a lifetime that I hope I never have to go through again, or that anybody has to go through. But if you do go through it and you haven't met Christ, you need to, because He will definitely be with you through all of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee, for sharing, and God bless you for everything you do.
Thank you.